Let me share my screen. You guys see that?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, well, let us get started. So first, I'll do an introduction to myself. This is a common practice from, I used to work at PepsiCo as well, but when you present to people that you don't know, it's very common there just culturally to share something about yourself, your life, and your career. So I'll do that in short order here. So first off, this is my family, my wife, Kelsey, our daughter, Grace, who is essentially a 6:30 a.m. alarm clock. She may well make an appearance tonight. That's out of my control. Education, undergrad at UT Austin in mechanical engineering. And then after several years, I moved here to Dallas and got my MBA at SMU, focusing in finance and marketing. I currently work at Systems Evolution Incorporated, SEI. It's a boutique management consulting firm. We offer advisory services to our clients in project and program management, data and analytics, technology enablement, and strategy and operations. Pre-SEI, the bulk of my career was at Quorum Software. It's a software consulting company out of Houston and Dallas. When I was getting my MBA, I had the opportunity to work with a venture capital firm called Silver Creek. And post MBA, I worked at PepsiCo, Frito-Lay in corporate finance. I quickly returned to consulting, and I've been at SEI for a little over 3.5 years. Since I've been there, I've had an opportunity to work at several different clients, most notably EssilorLuxottica is my longest tenured client. I did work for BCG, a small tech startup called DTAC, a software company here called Verdant, and most recently, a biopharmaceutical company out of Boston called Sarepta. So that's who I'm with now. So I just 6-7 weeks on the job there. So it's a good gig. This next part is tongue in cheek, but this is things that I think I can speak to. Motorcycle safety. I've owned 3 motorcycles, none now because of the 3-year-old. Prescription lenses. My time at EssilorLuxottica taught me quite a bit about the eye industry. So I'm a big fan myself. Luke Besson. I'm a big Fifth Element, Luke Besson movie buff. And finally, recruiting. That's why we're here. I've been passionate about recruiting since I was recruited out of college myself, right? Or even going back to internships. I've participated in recruiting since as early as I could in my career, whether it was assisting with interview logistics and eventually performing interviews, then leading interviews. While I was at Quorum, I led the recruiting efforts at UT, A&M, OSU, Rice, and Auburn. I have conducted hundreds and hundreds of interviews. Now, granted, we'll talk here in a second about some caveats, but I've done a lot of interviews. I've taken a lot of interviews myself. So that's why I am hopefully worthy of speaking to you on the topic. Quick view of the agenda. I know this was published earlier. We'll talk about the importance of the interview. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, I like to talk about the why. Like, why are we even talking about this? We'll talk about knowing yourself, which I think is key to doing well at in-person and or virtual interviews. Prep for the interview, specifically behavioral tips, and then some practical advice on optimizing your interview. I'll try to leave time for Q&A. I haven't timed this. I'm going to take it pretty quick. Here's the housekeeping. I talked to Durga earlier. Put any questions in the chat. We'll try to get through those. If I don't get through them, I can email like a summary of answers later. Very, very easy to do. Along with that, this is a safe space. All questions are valid. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to make fun of questions. This is really a good opportunity to get out any questions you might have on the matter. Because that's safe, turn your screens on. If you have circumstances that prevent you from doing that, don't worry about it. Not a big deal. What I'm finding in this COVID of everything age is that most corporations are going to a screen on policy. So you don't have to tonight, but I would encourage you in general to start doing that. Let's see what else. There's a lot to discuss on this topic. It's your call, but I'd prefer you actively listen rather than take notes. I've arranged with the club leadership to make this presentation and my speaking notes available afterwards. So just hang out. If you want to take notes, you may, but sometimes I learn better by just hearing it the first time. Last but not least, a caveat. I do have experience in this area, but I'm by no means an expert. Recruiting and interviewing is highly subjective, as you well know. I've tried to structure this in as unbiased and generic a way as possible, but I don't know everything. So good. That's all housekeeping, all caveats out of the way. Let's talk about the importance of the interview. Recruiting is a race, guys, and the interview is the final sprint. So you've played the numbers game of career fairs, networking, job postings. None of that, though, is enough to actually seal the deal. The one-on-one interaction of a final round or series of interviews where you speak directly with managers, that's the last piece of the puzzle, and that can make or break companies' decisions to hire you. Once you secure the interview, you need to make it count and maximize your chance of success, right? Preparation can't be limited to anticipating a handful of questions or doing some real basic company research. For the next couple minutes, let's walk through the interview and talk about the steps you need based on my experience, based on what I've seen, and try to get you guys optimized for your interviews. First off, knowing yourself, right? An interview is all about you. You're going to be asked probing questions about your technical and functional knowledge and abilities, and you're going to be judged on the quality of those answers and your ability to explain why you are the best candidate for the job. To maximize your chances of success, I want to explore several vehicles that you can use to ensure that you're an expert on yourself. So let's see, how do I do this? Yeah, first off, your resume. This is the industry standard, right? This is table stakes for any job hunt. I'm sure each of your resumes have gone through dozens of refinements and iterations since you've been at UTD. It's a living document. You should continually tweak it. That said, I don't want you to get tunnel vision about your resume, like looking for the perfect resume. How many of you, hold on, let's see, sorry. I see you guys. Okay, good. Screens are on. Show of hands, how many of you guys have a resume? Okay, good. How many of you have 2 resumes? Oh, okay, great. How many of you have 3 resumes? All right, maybe 1 or 2 here. Okay, it's kind of a trick question. You can have as many resumes as you want. I understand that that you may be limited by the Career Center to how many single uploaded versions you can have. But if you're going to a career fair, a company hosted event, a conference, applying online, I would strongly consider you tailoring your resume to your audience, right? This is most important a little further in your careers. Early on, there may just not be enough, and that's totally fine, but keep this in mind. So case in point, when I was getting my MBA and applying for jobs, I had 1 resume for finance, 1 for consulting. I didn't really apply for marketing, 1 for strategy. So you can tailor your experiences the more that you have of them. Next up, LinkedIn. This could be a whole presentation in and of itself. Your LinkedIn profile should be an expansion of your resume. It should tell a bigger story. It's your opportunity to brand yourself beyond just like what you've done. LinkedIn is your networking hub. I arrived at the networking game woefully late in life. You'll hear me reference it a couple of times in this presentation, but networking powered by LinkedIn is an incredibly valuable asset. And lastly, LinkedIn is your safety net, right? While networking can help you get the job, your resume can help you get the job, your interview, should that job disappear, the strength of your network can be the vehicle that gets you back to work sooner than later. So do not disregard LinkedIn. Next up, an expanded profile. So now we're getting to something that I think could help very much with an interview. This is not an industry standard concept. It's something I actually only found at my current firm, but it's a tool that's helped me quite a bit. At SEI, all new hires are required to build an expanded profile. Basically, you take every line item on your resume and make it a narrative. This is literally a book about you. And I don't mean to, it's like, mine is like 3 pages long for 20 years. So it's not that big of a book. But what this does is it makes you reflect on those experiences beyond just that 1-line quick hit you're trying to get. The more you can know and remember and document about your experiences, the more rich content you'll have for those behavioral tell me about a time questions. Last on knowing yourself is the elevator pitch. Again, I could have a whole presentation on this. The other 3 of these things are very complex, right? Elevator pitch is very simple. We're going to do another show of hands. How many people think an elevator pitch should be 5 minutes long? Okay. How many people think it should be 1 minute long? Okay. How many people think it should be 30 seconds long? Okay. Yet another trick question. It should be all of these, right? You do not know the circumstance of your elevator pitch. A career fair intro should be sub 30 seconds. There could be a dozen people behind you and you could be the 100th person that recruiters met. 30 seconds or less, or they will check out. If you're in a one-on-one situation or a small networking group, you're going to need a minute, maybe a minute and a half to really kind of introduce yourself. Again, I'm not gonna really go too deep into this, but my point is you can't memorize your elevator pitch because you can't memorize one. You can't know the circumstances it's gonna be given in. So if you use your resume, potentially this profile, and just use building blocks of your experience, and you can tailor make your elevator pitch to the situation. This takes practice, but it can pay off. So I know it's kind of real quick going through there, but more to say on each of these, but that's my philosophy on knowing yourself. Interview prep. In addition to the things we just talked about, there are a couple areas that I think, these are very conventional, you've heard of them. There's a couple areas that I think you owe it to yourself to prepare for. First is the job description. Hopefully you have a detailed job description from the job posting or something like that. Read this carefully. It's literally telling you what the company is looking for. The questions you're asked, both behavioral and technical, may well be designed to kind of ferret out whether you're the right person for this. That said, here's a caveat. I don't want you to try to game the system too much and like look at the job posting and be like, yes, I have every single one of these. Don't twist yourself into pretzels trying to make yourself match that job description. These things are largely aspirational. Read a basic job posting and nobody is qualified for it. Employers know that. It's not to scare you away. It's to be like, look, here's the superset of things we're looking for. We're trying to find somebody that checks many of these things, but beyond just checking boxes, are they a cultural fit? Are they engaged? Would they, do I want to work next to them? That sort of thing. So it's more than just checking boxes. After job description, company research. People get real weird about company research. Again, this is the Tate viewpoint of this. You guys are super busy with school, work, life, job search. There's only so much you can do. At a minimum, I would research the size of the company. Just know how many people is it? Is it 50 or 500 or 50,000, right? 500,000. What are their business lines? And I don't mean you need to memorize them. You just need to know the basics. Are they a technology company? Are they a medical device firm? Like you kind of just know the basics. Know where their headquarters is and have an idea of where their locations are. Are they Dallas? Are they domestic? Are they global? Know who their customer base is. Again, all of the total research should take you like 15, 30 minutes, but you do want to kind of know why they're making money, right? And who's buying what they're selling. Some people get real deep in like, I want to pull up their annual financial reports. Not a big deal unless you're applying for a financial position. What you do want to know is a quick Google search of news. Has there been any recent M&A activity? Have they gotten bought or have they bought anybody? And has there been anything in the news at all? Sometimes there's good stuff, sometimes there's bad stuff. And it would behoove you to kind of know that. These are not going to be test questions in the interview, but you're applying for a job there. You should want to know this. You can find this on their website, Google, and Wikipedia. That's it. 3 sites and you'll find it. At the end of the day, the most valuable research you can do on either one of these is going to be with your network. That means, is there any UTD alum that has that via the company's LinkedIn page works there? Can you reach out to them? Can you get intel on the job? Can you get intel on the company? That's far more valuable than a job posting or company research. All right, everybody's still here, awake, good. Let's go on. Next up, behavioral interview tips. I'm going to take a little bit here, so this one will take just a little bit longer. No fancy icons here. Show of hands, non-trick question. Who knows the difference between a behavioral and a technical interview? Yes, everybody? Okay, good. Non-trick question. I'm not going to go into it too deep, but I am going to start with why not technical? Why am I not going to cover it? Technical interviews are going to be vastly different depending on the job you're going out for. You'll need to pay attention to the job description. You'll need to rely on your studies. Having some inside knowledge of the process would be helpful here, but I can't give you a ton of advice because I don't exactly know the jobs you're going out for. So let's talk about behavioral. Behavioral interviews used to be things like, tell me about a time when you had to lead a group of people and the project went down in flames. You get what they are. They're trying to get at your behavior. They're trying to get at your experience. And you will get these. I'd be shocked if you didn't. The good thing about these is that these are not questions about random technologies or processes or tools or systems. They're questions about you. And as we just talked about, you are the expert of you. And if you know yourself and you follow some basic principles, you can actually come away with a really solid behavioral interview. So let's go through a couple things. Don't let your first interview be with the company you want most, right? I hear this, not from my mentees, some of whom are on the call, but I'll say, somebody will say, hey, I've got an interview coming up. It's my first one of the year. It's with Amazon. They'd be like, great, do you want to work for them? Oh, more than anything. Don't let that company be the first company you interview with. You need to practice behaviorals on your own. You need to practice them with friends. You need to practice a lot, and you need to practice by actually doing real interviews. Don't let your first interview be with the company you want most. Don't anticipate questions. I know you can go out and Google a bunch of traditional behavioral questions. I've done it. Don't interview them. If you do, you're going to come off as mechanical. You also have no idea what they're going to ask. You also have no idea the depth that people are going to go into on behaviorals. I'll share a quick anecdote. I was getting out of undergrad. I'm doing a ton of interviews. I'm interviewing with this engineering firm, and they flew me to Houston, wined and dined. It was really nice. I go in for the interview, and I'm with this like kind of grizzled plant engineer. He goes, and tell me, and by this point I've been interviewing for weeks and I'm slick. Like my answers are slick. I've got a pause. I sound genuine. And this guy proceeds to ask me like the most complex, multi-part, tell me about a time question that I have ever had. And I'm like, oh, and I answer it. I take my time. I use what I know about myself. I answer it. I go through it. And it takes a while. This is like an hour, 15 interview or something. This one question takes a while. And he pauses, finishes the notes. He goes, tell me about another time like that. And I was like, oh, so then now I have to go all the way back through. So you can't know the depth of the answers you're going to get. And so just don't do it. Don't try to anticipate. Approach it like the elevator pitch. Have a bunch of small anecdotes, know yourself, and be able to pull in the right story for the job. This is kind of along the same thing. Don't memorize your responses. It comes across as super rehearsed. We're all humans, even in this awful two-dimensional interaction we have. You know when somebody is coming across as disingenuous, and that comes across so much in a one-on-one interview. Again, knowing your building blocks is going to help improve, let you select the best answers, answer quickly, and answer genuinely. Answer questions completely but succinctly. Interviewers interview a lot of people. They hear a lot of answers, and they know the difference between an avoidance answer and a complete answer. So as much as possible, actively listen. This is another reason why you don't want to anticipate. Listen to the question, pick the right response, and then answer completely, but don't drone on. And that's my next point, which is read the room. Read the room to assess the duration of your answer. Your answer to a question in a 30-minute phone screen is different than your answer in a 60-minute face-to-face. By read the room, I mean if your interviewer is continuously asking for more details, follow-ups deeper, that could be a cue that you need to extend your answers a bit. I call it double clicking, like go one step deeper, explain one more thing about it. Conversely, if you're giving your answer and you're actively talking to somebody and they'll be taking notes. It doesn't matter whether they're taking notes or not. If you see them start putting a pencil down and doing this, and or just kind of checking out, That's your cue. Shorten your answer. If they want longer, they'll ask you. And those two things are subtle and it requires practice, but give it a shot. Just be on the lookout for it. Let's see, anything else? And this is another reason not to memorize answers. You're gonna have to respond on the spot. Don't go back to the same well. I don't care if you have never worked before and your only experience is club activities, class projects, maybe an internship, maybe like an external consulting gig through the school. Those are all rich. That if you know yourself well enough that you can speak to something that you contributed, that you did, that you learned in any of those. If you have one workout, if you have, let's say you are here and you have one work experience and your clubs and all that, if every one of your answers refers to that work experience, that gets real old real fast. This is personally subjective. I would much rather hear a diversity of what you've done than you think, oh, they're only going to want to know about that those 3 years I worked for XYZ firm. That's great. And you can reference that multiple times, but you have to pepper in other things. Otherwise, I'm not thinking you have diverse experience. Again, subjective, but that's, I don't know, it rings true for me, and I try to follow that myself. You can ask for time, but not every time. There is a philosophy, my sister used to think this, and she got a fine job, so maybe it works, that after every question you should be like, like a pause, or can I have a moment to think about that? I mean, maybe, but if you do it every time, it's 100% going to come across as mechanical and rehearsed. Do it when you need to do it. If they really stump you, if they ask something complex, you'd be like, let me think about that for a second. I don't even, personally, it's not valuable. Now, all I can think about is like, my shoes are brown. Like, maybe it's helpful. You cannot go for more than like 5 or 10 seconds. You're truly not buying yourself much time. It gets real awkward real quick. But if you do it, you can do it. Just use it sparingly. Leverage the STAR approach. This is something I've worked with my mentees on. STAR approach. All of y'all know it. If you don't know it, Google it. There's thousands of articles about it. It is situation, task, action, result. It's a way, it's a framework for structuring your answers. So you ask me a question, tell me about a time when you had to deliver a difficult message to a client. Well, immediately, and I live by this. So I was working at a medical device firm. I was reporting up through the marketing organization, and I was running a new product launch. That's a situation. Task. They had charged us with launching 3 of their new products in half the time it normally takes. Task. I organized each of their corporate divisions into work streams. I set up routine checkpoints with them, and I instilled accountability and urgency into them. That was the action. As a result, we were able to launch all those products. They were on time, and we used that same methodology going forward. I just answered a question in like 20 seconds that if need be, I could speak to that for 20 minutes. I would use the exact same approach. I would use that exact same STAR approach. That said, be careful with this. That's why I have the be flexible. If you do that every time, it comes across weird. Like, people pick up on patterns. And if you're like, I did this. So again, you need, and we'll talk a little bit in executing in optimizing the interview about kind of how to be natural, or my advice to be natural. Use STAR, no STAR, but be flexible. You can't do it every time, or it will seem weird. Last but not least, for behaviorals, practice. You need to be in the practice and be ultra comfortable talking about yourself. Not only does this build confidence, but it will reduce nerves in your interview. You should be practicing with a buddy, classmate, roommate, friend every week during heavy recruiting season. You should certainly do this a day before the interview. I don't want you to over practice. I don't want you to get rehearsed, but you need to get those jitters out the day before. It's important to switch up questions. It's important to switch up the questioner. If you're doing it with your roommate, don't always do that. Get somebody else to help you with this. Record yourself, Watch yourself and be honest about how you think you're doing. All right, now we get to the meat of it, to optimizing your interview. So you know yourself, you've done your research, you're a fine-tuned behavioral interviewing machine. How do you optimize your interview? You need to continue, even in the interview circumstance, to continue to stack the deck for yourself. First off, let's talk logistics. This advice is going to largely be during COVID centric, right? I would say different things if you were going to be in the room. I think it's going to be a while before you're in the room with somebody. So if you're going to be in the room with somebody, you can call me and we'll talk about it. But let's talk COVID, because that's what we're doing now. Your background is important. Have a professional background. I don't care if Rohan looks like he's in a skyscraper. I think that's fine. If it's the white wall of your apartment, that's fine. Do not have clutter behind you. I love the project management club backgrounds. They're very colorful. I wouldn't use those. I would just either have it be a neutral wall, a setting in your apartment or house that's clean and organized, or put up a Zoom background. That's pretty dang professional. I think you can probably just do a white background, you know. Background, this is just professionalism. Background matters. Lighting, you do not want to look like some video of somebody trying to hide their identity, like a black, you know, just a black sphere with sun coming in behind you. Even if you put a lamp in front of you, I promise it will be better. Priyanka has really good lighting today. See, so as does Professor Scott. So good lighting. Test the technology. Every dang company uses something different. You better have Zoom, WebEx, Teams, GChat. There's a bunch of weird third-party ones. Make sure you test it. If at all possible, test it with a friend, that sort of thing. Make sure your audio is working. Don't bring new headphones to your first interview day. These are all rookie moves. Minimize sounds. I know you may have roommates. They need to know that this is the capstone of all your efforts. They need to be quiet. Try to minimize sounds. I have a dog in the room. I'm going against my own suggestions, but hopefully she stays quiet. Dress to impress. Virtual interviews are the only option right now. You need to treat them like real interviews. You need to show up as if you were showing up, which is probably going to be business professional or business casual at a minimum. Even if the person on the other end is wearing a t-shirt, they will take note of it. If they tell you to wear a t-shirt, wear a t-shirt. If you don't know, you can always ask. A recruiter will tell you. But I default to, at a minimum, a button-down shirt. I'm real comfortable in a sport coat. Full disclosure, because this is a safe space, I'm wearing shorts. Nobody knows. You wouldn't know if I told you. So dress the part, dress to impress. In addition to minimizing sounds, minimize distractions. Again, that's silencing your phone, which I think I did. As much as possible, no dogs, no nothing like that in the room. Have what you need around you. Have paper, pen. I use OneNote. I don't do a ton physically. I do a bunch of it on screen. Have water, right? Especially if you're gonna have back-to-back interviews. Be prepared so that you're ready. All right, next up, how to be. I kind of referenced this earlier. Be yourself. First and foremost, don't be what they think they want you to be. Be yourself. If they don't hire you for being yourself, this was not meant to be. That said, be the most professional version of yourself. So if you're the class clown, if you're the fun guy, that's great. You should let some of your personality come through, but this needs to be the most professional version of yourself that is still friendly, that is still collegial and that sort of thing, but it does have to be professional. This is a professional environment. Be confident. If you have practiced, if you know yourself, if you have researched, hopefully that instills some confidence in you. Again, I'll say it again, you are the expert at yourself. This interview is about yourself. You should be able to do this. So have confidence. That does come through. It does come through even on a screen. The corollary to that for me is be engaged. There is a difference between what I'm doing now, I can see myself, between what I'm doing now and this. Okay, even on the screen, I credit my Frito-Lay internship during my MBA and the subsequent job I got because of my level of engagement in the interview. It was me against 5, 6 of my buddies that were all in MBA school with me. They were all probably smarter at finance than I was, but I come to find out after talking to the recruiter after I got the job, a couple of them just kind of sat there, hands in their lap, like this. I was so interested in what was going on in the process, in the questions. I was, elbow on the table, and not aggressively, because I also try to mirror the people that are interviewing me, but I was excited. They could hear in my voice that I was engaged. I was interested in what was going on. I wasn't just there to answer questions and hit leave. So your level of engagement, tempered by professionalism, should be there. And lastly, be truthful. Again, if you are honest about who you are, you're yourself, confident, professional, engaged, and they don't want you, this was not meant to be. If you are not truthful about what you want, about what you can do, about what you like, it's like getting into a bad relationship and then finding out that the person snores or doesn't shower or something like that. Like, this will all come out. It's better to get into something for the right reasons with all the right stuff than to not be truthful. All right, questions to ask. This is questions to ask the interviewers. Another show of hands. How many of you have been in an interview where they said, "Do you have any questions for me?" Yes, it should be everybody. It happens. Oh, I love the little virtual hands. Thank you, guys. I would be shocked if this doesn't happen. Almost even in a 30-minute, for dang sure an hour interview, it will almost always happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If it does, you must be ready. This is an IQ test. This is also the very last thing that happens in an interview, and it will be the interviewer's last impression of you. We'll talk here in a minute about questions to ask that I think you should or should not ask, but does that make sense? Like, this is it. You could have answered everything right, and then when they say, "Do you have questions?" I've reserved 15 minutes. Do you have questions? And you're like, what are the next steps in the process? Oh, you just lost 15 minutes of intel, of engagement, of back and forth with them. So you need to be prepared. General advice: do your homework on the company, the role, and the interviewer. Sometimes you won't know who it's going to be. If you do, you should LinkedIn them. Don't friend them yet, but you should LinkedIn stalk the heck out of them. Where are they from? Where did they go to school? What was their career progression? How long have they been here? Don't ask questions that you have already been told or should already know. If you were given a detailed job description, don't be like, "What does this job entail?" They'll be like, what are we here for? I gave you all that. You should know. So if there has been minimal job description, that's a great time. Sometimes phone screens, hey, I know we don't have much time now, but can you just give me the broad strokes of the position or even the group that you're interviewing for? What a valid question. And now you're getting intel that hopefully will inform the future. Don't ask tricky questions. Don't ask complex technical questions unless you're sure the person has a background in it. Don't ask questions about the company, like niche questions. This is another pitfall of, "Oh, I read all the recent press releases and I see that you acquired ABC Co." What if your interviewer doesn't know about that? Now, all they can say is, "Oh, I don't know about that." And now they're thinking, "Well, I suck. I'm a failure because I haven't answered Durga's question." And what have you done? You've made them feel bad. And the last thing I thought about you was I felt bad at the end of that interview. Does that make sense? Like, this is why you have to leave them ultra positive. So do ask questions that have an almost impossible chance of being negative or coming across poorly. There's thousands of these. You can go online and you're going to see a bunch of questions like, "Tell me about the position. Tell me about the..." Evaluate them. If you think they're good, you can ask them. I ask open-ended questions that I think will produce a positive result. And I'm not just doing it to kiss butt. I'm doing it so I can learn more. Tell me about how you came to this company and how you progressed to your current position. We all love talking about ourselves. Any interviewer, this could burn 3 to 5 minutes. And it's not just lip service. You're now learning what it took to progress to their spot. They're going to name drop departments, divisions, and roles that they had. Now you know a little bit more about the landscape of the company, okay? What have you seen contribute to the success of newcomers to this role? What a wonderful question. They're going to talk about it. They're going to give you intel on the role. And psychologically, they're going to start thinking, what would this person be like in that role? What if they were successful? Like, you've just set up an incredibly positive scenario. What are the next steps in the process? This is valid only if you haven't been told. And this should be the last question you ask, and it should be where there's like 3 minutes left, or something like that. If they've already told you, or you kind of already know, don't ask this. You should know it. If you have no clue what happens next, say, I think that's all the questions I have for now. But I'm very interested to know what happens next in the process. Great, very professional. That passes the ball back to them, and they shift into whatever they're going to tell you. So you leave it as positive as you possibly can with them. Sound good? Last thing for optimizing after the interview. This depends on a number of factors, but if at all possible, you want to thank them after the fact, preferably with an email, worst case with LinkedIn. My current job at SEI, I went through 7 rounds of interviews. My company does a real long interview process. I went through 7 rounds. Every single time I emailed the recruiting director and said, would you mind if I got Bill's email? I want to send him a thank you note. I wasn't weird about it. I didn't send anything other than that. And if they say no, then that's fine. Send it on LinkedIn. They can't stop that. And if they don't check it, they don't check it. But if you're sending a succinct professional, and don't get too twisted about, you have to send them insightful knowledge. Just say, hey, I really appreciated your time today. I enjoyed learning more about the company and your experience. Thank you for your consideration, Jake. Fine. But do send a thank you note if at all possible. Also, debrief with yourself, debrief with your classmates. Do a little retrospective. We're all supposed to be agile here. What went well? What went poorly? What can I do better next time? And act on that. Okay. That we are at almost at 5:45. That's a solid 40-ish minutes. So I will turn it over for Q&A. Do we have anything in the chat, or do we want to, hey, see, I told you. Or do we want to open it up?
Tate, do you mind if I kick it off a little bit?
As many as you can. We got time.
All right. Great insight. I actually, while I not say learned something new, the way you presented it was very insightful as far as how somebody leaving UTD could really engage in a meaningful perspective in an interview. That was very clear and concise. I think it was a great discussion.
Cool.
The problem is, how do I recover from a bad interview during the interview, and then how potentially would you advise somebody recovering after the interview to kind of make up for mistakes they've mentioned?
The easiest answer is that last part, which is my retrospective. You need to be real honest with yourself about what went well. Great, let's keep doing that. What went poorly? Did you freeze? Did they ask you a question you didn't know? Even technically, did technical things go wrong? Man, how did I not see that they were going to ask about my R programming skills? Was R in the job description? So you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to shore those things up. I'm getting back to your real question, which is how do you recover in the interview? I'm answering the easy part first. You need to be honest with yourself. You also need to dust yourself off. It's one thing. You guys, recruiting is such a numbers game. You know that. And so is interviewing. We cannot let ourselves be crushed by previous failures. The next person you interview with, the next company you interview with, has no idea how bad you bombed that. And maybe you didn't even bomb it. They do not know. You cannot, if you let that interview your next one, you're doing a disservice to yourself. So let's talk about bombing during an interview, of which I have done some amount of. You know what? It is what it is. It's a natural human interaction. This can look like a number of things. They could ask you a technical question that you straight up don't know the answer to. I had this happen in a finance interview, and you have to be honest. We're in the middle of a complex case study. There's financial stuff, and they were like, it was a Frito-Lay, and they were like, what would you do here? And I was like, I mean, I'd already kind of done some answers, and I was like, unfortunately, maybe I'm not as familiar with the terminology being used. Can you give me a suggestion? And if they're going to be rude and not give you a suggestion, then again, maybe this isn't right for you. At the time, and I won this interview. At the time, they're like, okay, what we're looking for is either we can increase the price or decrease the weight of this bag of chips. I was like, oh, of course. And I used that, and I kind of rebounded it, and I was like, so if we increase the price, we need to worry about what consumers will see. If we decrease the weight, won't that have an impact on what we have to put on the bag? So I'm like, I didn't know the financial intricacies of taking price and taking weight, but I bounced off of it. I didn't let it crush me, and I tried to explore around that. If you straight up don't know, you're going to have to admit it. It will look worse if you're faking it. If you get stumped on a behavioral, you can say, you know what? Honestly, I haven't encountered that. You get one of those. No more. You get one. But and even if you do that, you can say, you know what? I haven't experienced that specific thing, but one time, and just say something else as close to it as you possibly can. You know what? Did you knock it out of the park? No. But did you fall flat? No. And maybe they heard something else interesting about you. Does that sound good, Scott?
Oh, that's perfect. I love that.
What else have we got? All right. I don't know how to read these very well. Okay. You said I got my undergrad in mechanical. Why'd you decide to go mechanical to finance? Does this part of your background ever help you in current role? Yes, I won't talk too long about myself, but the short answer-ish is that I was mechanical engineering. When I graduated, I was pretty burnt out on engineering. I'm proud of that engineering, the problem solving, but the careers that were available to me seemed very siloed, and I wanted diversity of experience. I wanted to use communication and work with people and solve problems. And so that's why I chose consulting. Even then, I couldn't get into the big consulting companies. They didn't want an engineer with a GPA. I went to a software firm and I literally learned to code, had never lifted a finger, and I learned PL SQL, C++, some rules-based legacy languages of theirs, and that's where I got my start. I left that company, got my MBA, fell in love with finance. Finance is money, it's quant, it's strategy, it's like the sexiest of the business disciplines. I went into corporate finance and I was like, oh, I don't like this. Again, Frito-Lay is an awesome company. The people there are great. My wife works there now. It wasn't for me. The roles were super scripted, super well defined, and just the way my mind works, I'm gonna think outside the box. I'm gonna work over here, and it just wasn't right there. So to finish the question, yes, my engineering background holds me in good stead in problem solving for my entire life. My finance background lets me speak to business issues. Am I going to walk through somebody's full filings and P&L? Maybe not, but I at least know the gist of it. All of you guys, whether you go into highly technical or maybe consulting, whatever it is, you're there to make money from a company that is there to make money. Understanding how they make money and why and the levers, that can be important. So that's another reason why I at least dabbled in business.
We have some of them who have raised their hands. So I think Afua, I don't know how to pronounce your name, but you can go ahead. You can remove yourself from mute and you can speak.
Certainly.
Hi, thank you. It was a great presentation. And I wanted to ask you, like, an example of question that I can ask at the end of the interview. Can I just ask them about a feedback on how I did during the interview, or is it going to reflect bad on me?
What an excellent question. Okay, I would get this again. I without exaggeration, I've done hundreds of interviews. I would get that question maybe one time in 10 or one time in 20. This is very subjective, very personal preference. If you look online, everybody tells you to ask it. I do not like it. Nothing good can come out of that. It controverts my rule. You're not leaving them positive. You're forcing them to rethink of all the bad stuff that they may have thought about you. A variant of that is there anything you've heard about me that you think won't allow me to do this job? That's terrible. like maybe you want to know, but if there is something, they're just straight not going to give it to you. You're already in the interview. It's already gone. You're not going to learn something between now and getting the job. It's a wonderful, wonderful question. You guys use it if you want. I have seen it. I have answered it. I have answered it where I didn't hate the person for asking me. But for me personally, I think there's 5 other things that I'd rather ask. Now, if you get turned down for it, now listen, if you get turned down, they send you a rejection, 1,000% valid to send it back. Hey, I totally get it. I really just appreciate even the time to come at bat and talk to you. If there's anything you can share, I'm happy to take constructive feedback. You're not going to get an answer because there's legal implications there, but maybe you will. Maybe you will. You can absolutely, absolutely ask it. Great question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There's one here from Rohan. What are the things that you want to hear as an interviewer when I ask somebody, tell me about yourself? I want to hear your elevator pitch. Tell me about yourself is an invitation for your elevator pitch. Straight up. It is, where did I get my undergrad? What work have I done? I'm now at UTD. I'm studying this. I'm concentrating in this. I'm very interested in this. These are the building blocks. If it's a 30-minute phoner, you have a minute to do it. If it's a 1 hour in person, you better have a decent 2-hour synopsis. When I do this, I have my resume in front of me. It reads top to bottom. I graduated from my undergrad with this. Now I'm a UTD. Previously, I've worked in these spaces. I'm mostly interested in this and blah, blah, blah. So it's your elevator pitch. Short answer. Manvi wants to know how to answer salary-related questions during the interview. Sometimes even the job application, they ask about salary expectations. Should you give a range? Coming out of grad school, this is tough because you're not working. You don't have a range and they know it. Furthermore, at this point, let's just be honest, at this point in our career, in your careers, there may not be much wiggle room, right? So what they're going to give is what they're going to give. My preference, and we can bounce this from, my preference is to say, whatever you feel the market value of this role is. Companies don't have the ability to pay you half of what they're paying somebody else doing the same thing. HR has very well-defined bands that they can only slide up and down a little bit based on merit and experience and other things. They're going to pay you what they're going to pay you. If you do think you have a value, you can say it. I've only ever gotten in trouble with it. I think it's a little bit of a trick question. And saying, you know what, the market, I would defer to what you guys think the market value of my skills are. You've seen me and I've shared my experience. I would love to be a member of the team and I'm not going to get hung up on this. These are good jobs you guys are applying for. They're not going to screw you. If they are, then you shouldn't be there. What else? Any other hands?
Yeah, we have Pratik who has raised his hand. So Pratik, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks, Shamina. Hey, first of all, thanks a lot for this informative session. It was great. So my question is, you kept talking about knowing yourself and preparing for the interview. So are you indicating towards having a story of the entire life from your school to the undergrad to the master's and answer the questions based on that story?
Thank you for the clarification. My 20-year career profile is 3 pages long. So yours should be call it a page or 2 or 3. I really don't care how long it is. I would stick to documenting your projects, like large group, like you're in school, large group projects. If you've worked, document the large chunks of things that you were given. You should use this to answer the question, but you should not answer in narrative form. You should take chunks from it to answer the question appropriately. My problem is that if all you do is memorize your resume, you only know 3 lines from one work experience. If you have paragraphs, then it's fresh in your mind. You remember, oh, I did deal with a difficult boss. I did have a conflict with the coworker. Like, if you're not actively thinking about these things, don't rely on your memory. Your memory sucks. And after you've worked for 20 years, you will not remember what you did the first year, but you might have to pull something from it. So does that make sense? So again, don't answer the long form. That is for you and for you only. And it's something for you to be like a refresher. Okay, I remember that. I remember that experience. I think I can pull some good things from there. It's for reference only. Good question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pete.
Priyanka, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Kamina. Thank you, it was a wonderful presentation. So my question is, like if I'm currently I'm applying for internship where I'm looking for roles in project management and as a business analyst as well because of my prior work experience where I've worked as a business analyst, but in the project management field. So I'm looking at those roles. So what if in the future an interviewer will ask me, have you applied to similar jobs for other companies or are you looking for different roles as well? So is it like a tricky question where I have to tell that I'm looking for two roles, or should I be honest about it, or will it actually harm me in any way if I say these are my interests?
It's subjective. It's going to be based on the interview. I don't find this to be a tricky question.
Okay.
I would take the interviewer if we're trusting each other as potential future coworkers. They just want to know. I ask this question of people that I really want because I want to know if I'm in competition with other firms, and if they have other interests, that's fine. You can spin this and say, I have prior work experience both as a BA and with shades of a PM. I'm absolutely interested in both because I think I can succeed in both. That's a great answer to a question that not only that like, oh man, now I've got competition for her. I may need to go after her. I do this today when recruiting for my company. I ask them, is there anybody else that I should be worried about? I think it's fine. You need to be careful about it and not be like, and I've had this, I could go into engineering or I could go into marketing. That's not good. That shows we're of two minds. But the two things you listed are absolutely can go hand in hand and are valid.
Thank you.
Sion, you can go ahead with your question.
You're muted if you're talking.
Yeah,
I'm
Sion.
so sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, Ken, you're good.
Right. Okay. So I said thank you so much for the presentation. First of all, so I'm also transitioning actually from political science to IT management. It's because for my 3 years of working experience, I worked as a business analyst, but I'm very interested in IT consulting, like what you do, and project management. So, and you talked a lot about elevator pitch. I was wondering, what do you think is a good elevator pitch for a person looking for a job in the field of, I guess, IT consulting or IT project management? Do I have to talk about like my interpersonal skills, like documentation skills, or do I talk about like technical aspects of, I guess, IT?
For me, the elevator pitch really is not your aspiration is only one part of it. The elevator pitch, in my mind, and they can look a bunch of different ways, is a quick rundown. Here's what I got my undergrad in. Here's what I've worked at. Here's what I'm in school for. Here's what I'm interested in. In my elevator pitch, do not try to sell myself on, I'm a good listener. I'm a good communicator. I like long walks on the beach. That stuff should come out in an interview. Your elevator pitch should really be a very brief resume and then let them dive down into it. I'm glad you asked this as a transitioning candidate. Don't be embarrassed about what you've done before. You know, if you said, I used to be a circus performer and now I'm going to be a data scientist, maybe not much to go on, but and I wouldn't do this in an elevator pitch, in interviews or in extended conversations, that's when you can say, look, there are things from my background, even though it's poli-sci, hey, even though it's poli-sci, I gotta yell at my Yorkie poo. There's things from my background that I think apply to this. And you know what? I am sending a signal to industry that I have come to Dallas and I'm studying at UTD in this and I'm succeeding in it as an indicator of how much I think I can succeed in this in the real world. That's confidence. That's the truth. Don't be ashamed of what you've done in the past.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Tate, I have a question for you. So, like usually our resume speaks a lot about our technical background, like what we have done earlier and what we are planning to do ahead. But how do we bring our soft skills, like like I work with a team, I'm a good listener, or I'm a rigorous worker. So how do I bring these soft skills on my resume and show it to them that I do have soft skills as well?
Sure. I didn't have anything about this in the deck, but you bring up a great point. All of that should come out in the behaviorals. It probably won't come out in a technical. It might be a little weird coming out in there because they're asking you very dry things. In any behavioral answer, not in every, because you got to make it natural. Don't seem like you're stuffing it, but in any behavioral, you can drop those in. You know what? So, it was difficult, but you know what? I consider myself to be a good listener. I really like diffusing. Well, nobody likes diffusing conflicts. On occasion, I've had to diffuse conflicts. It's not something I love to do, but I have shown an ability to do it. Like, you can drop these little things about yourself into your story. It's the story of you, after all. So don't just use STAR to say situation, task, action, result. Drop in the things about you personally. Again, you're going to have to do it judiciously. Don't pour the salt. Well, sprinkle the salt. Does that make sense? But if you're talking about yourself and you're confident and you know yourself, you should be able to do that. And it's appropriate to do so.
Thank you so much, Tate. So do we have any other questions, guys? We will be still taking a few questions, and if not, I think we'll be wrapping up. Yeah, Rohan, you have raised your hand. You can.
Yeah, Famina.
Yes, sure.
Thanks, Famina. Thank you, Tate. These are all excellent points that we'll be keeping in our minds, like when we go for the next interviews. I have one quick question for you. Like sometimes we also get this kind of questions. What do you think, in your opinion, is your major strength, and what are your couple of weaknesses? Now, strengths we all know, but when we have to talk about our weaknesses, now what do you actually, like as an interviewer, what do you expect? Like, do we actually disclose our weaknesses, or we spin it around in a way of a strength?
Subjective. My opinion, I would never disclose a weakness. I would always spin it around to a strength. I don't like this question because I expect that people are going to do that. And if they do give me a weakness, I'm going to shoot them for it. I literally had a guy that was like, you know what? This is undergrad years ago. He goes, I like to set the bar real low so that regardless of how I do, it comes across pretty well. And I was like, you should not have said, so you got to be truthful, always truthful, but you all need to think about this question. It'll come up one time in 10, maybe one time in 5. And your strength, as you said, we get it. Your weakness, you do need to be honest. And it can be anything. And you already said it yourself, you must spin it. You must admit something and then either share how you address it and say, you know what, I am challenged in what it can't be is my only weakness is that I care too much. Don't be cheesy. Don't you really do have to give them something. It needs to be, you know what, there have been times when I have a lot on my plate that I seem to focus on one thing. But you know what I've learned is that I'm not successful when I just focus on that one thing, because it leaves things at the bottom of the stack and then I get to them too late. So what I work on every day, it's almost part of an agile mindset where I do sprints. I do sprints of things. That way I can find out, is this task much deeper than I thought? Honestly, even though it's not how I was originally wired, I'm rewiring myself. Boom, I just made that up. What a great answer. But so you need to think about yourself and think about some negatives, find something that's not too awful and something that you do think you can make strides on, and that's how I'd answer. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you.
I've got one more slide, so if you'll give me just a couple more seconds before we wrap up. Sound good? Special thanks. I would not be here were it not for the Technology Ball. Karen Bruno and Professor Gaurav, they got me into the Technology Ball's mentor program at UTD. And so thank them for getting me here. But even more than that, thanks to my mentees and friends. So these are the folks that I have met with over the past year. Ishan, Durga, Vivek, Rajni is my current mentee, and Ojas. You guys are awesome, and you have shaped my opinion of the current job market, and of course, improve my opinion of set the bar for my opinion of UTD. Thank you guys all for everything, and thank you guys for having me. This was a very, very fun. I really, really appreciate the opportunity.
We enjoyed having you as well, Tate. It was an amazing session.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
do we have any other questions, guys, or can we go ahead and wrap up the session?
It would be great if Tate would agree to do a lecture on something that he's learned in his current occupation on a every other week basis.
Yeah.
That
I don't have time.
very easy to listen to you.
Cool, man. I'm happy to come back at some point in the future. You guys need to hear from diverse voices, so I encourage that. I love that you guys do this. I love that you do attend it. Hopefully it's worth hopefully it's worth your hour. But yeah, it was my pleasure. And I will send Durga a PDF of this. It's going to have everything I said in it because I was reading the whole time. But you'll see what I said. I mean, yeah, there's nothing secret or hidden in it. It's a PDF. Cool. All right. Thank you. Very nice seeing you all. Very nice meeting you. Thank you for the wonderful questions and your time. Talk to y'all later.
Before
Thank
you
you.
leave,
Thank you so much. You have a good one.
Thank you, Tate, for everything, and then thank you to all the students and the professor for attending this meeting as well. And I hope you have a good night. Talk to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, bud.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
you.
evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you,
Professor.
Tate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.